I'm Jonathan Bush. I'm a father of 7. Oh, all right, thank you. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm a veteran. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the former chairman of the FREOPP board of directors, and I am a candidate for governor of Maine. This is, sadly for me, not a stump speech, and sadly for me, none of you can vote for me. You can all donate at www.jonathanbush.org if you're interested. But while I'm no longer chairman here at FREOPP, I have never been more appreciative of FREOPP's mission to improve the lives of America's bottom half through innovation, pluralism, and freedom. And to that end, I'm never been more excited about this Freedom and Progress Conference, organized in the spirit of Frederick Douglass's admonition to newly freed slaves to vote however they wanted, that had been the point of the Civil War, that they didn't have to vote for him, but that he himself would vote for the Republican Party as long as it stayed the party of freedom and of progress. And what I take from that is that those two things stay connected. My life as a candidate, which is about going to hunters' breakfasts and turkey dinner informationals at Lions clubs and Grange halls and churches, is a journey through the looking glass for my formerly corporate eyes. My ears are filled with example after example of law and rule and regulation that is steeped, has its root chakra in the original Jeffersonian intention to protect the little guy, to make this American game one that all could play, but has metastasized into blockers of freedom for the unconnected citizen, and thus blockers of his progress. In fact, worse than that, these rules have metastasized, honestly, if you look around this town, into barriers of entry that elites with lawyers on speed dial can use, that compliance departments can be formed around, the opposite of their original intent. This makes for a feeling by some that this blessed free market experiment around which this country is built is just a fig leaf, protecting a game that is played mostly by cronies. It is driving Americans in every state, we are watching it, to the extreme poles of our political spectrum. And that could not possibly end well for any of us. In Maine, this well-meaning rot is having profound cultural implications. It is convincing the most reliant, self-sufficient community of makers and doers, for which Maine is known, that they are no longer permitted to do and to make. At the Vassalboro Fire Department at 4:30 in the morning, I met Riley. Now, Riley has been working full-time since he is 15. He's everything you want in a fellow American. He worked his way up the EMT spectrum till he got to the paramedic level, works for the city of Waterville, got off work that day at midnight and came and slept in his car so that he could start cooking eggs for the 4 o'clock start of the hunter's breakfast to raise money to buy an ambulance for the town of Vassalboro, which has none. In the course of my conversation with him, I learned that when he got married this year, he and his wife, who both are employed well with benefits, savings, etc., were unable to find any house in the town of Vassalboro that they could afford. Maine's property prices, housing costs, have gone up 50% since COVID, but there has been no commensurate spike in supply. You would think a rise in price like that in a freedom and progress mindset would lead to many more houses, but no. There is layer after layer of performative, environmental, well-intended supply chain, net zero ambition that has chased capital and project away. So Riley, undaunted, God, I love this guy, says, well, my uncle's got a lot of land. I'll buy some from him. We'll have a work party, buy a mill, I'll make the wood, we'll get a kit, and we'll build the house. So he goes into town, he's got his land, he's cleared his site, he's milled his wood, the uncles have all helped. No permit. What? Well, Riley learns that in Maine, if you want to build a house with your own wood, you have to have a special stamp on that wood. The wood inspection stamp. So to protect Riley from him choosing unsafe wood, he has to pay $250 an hour for a wood inspector. All wood inspectors, by the way, work at the lumberyard mills that he just took his business from to get going. This is one gem of a story. There are countless others. And they're accumulating, not just in housing, but in energy, transportation, healthcare. All manner of cost of living is being impinged upon, and all of our economic growth is concentrating, and we are seeing this, into an ever smaller number of individuals and companies that, God bless them, have the coefficient of lift even greater than the coefficient of drag that we are building around them. This is where FREOPP comes in. Blowing up our laws is completely impractical and realistic, and it feels good when other think tanks write glowingly about such ideas, and we are glad for their intellectual contributions, even if it gets a little theoretical at times. But given where we are, the service of freedom and with it progress, I believe, is best served in concretely constructed little precise bites. Bites that have sweated the details. Bites that can win on their practical merits and thus attract votes across aisles. FREOPP research programs wade into the muck of accumulated unintended consequence and pump it out and reprocess it. Not with a glorious, shiny chainsaw, but thoughtfully, quietly, conscientiously, in a way that both sides of the aisle can at least appreciate, and sometimes we have seen actually act on. Today's conference is rich in such detail. In fact, you could almost think of FREOPP not as a think tank, but, as our new leader taught me, and I was incited by it, a do tank. When I'm governor, and I will be governor, the first thing I will do is call FREOPP. I will cut and paste this good work. Work to make housing more affordable, and education more accountable, and energy more reliable, not for the power elites who we will, of course, appreciate and try to help. We probably want a Bitcoin farm out there somewhere on the coast. But really, more importantly, for the 137,000 small businesses registered in Maine, out of a state of 1.4 million. That's like less than 10 people for each small business registered in Maine. Not so we can move average numbers, but median ones, so that individual stories of the not averaged in, of the peeled off top, are credibly hopeful, rich in freedom and in progress. So that we can believe deeply yet again what Frederick Douglass believed, that progress comes from freedom. Today is jam-packed. I've already got anxiety over which of the concurrent sessions. I hate concurrent sessions when there's so many things that I love. I will be your MC for the few times that we gather here, and I look forward to being able to be in front of you because you are a collection of people that sees through the zeitgeist into the concrete cornerstones that we need to tend to make this great society greater still. And with that, I will give you our fearless new leader who has given us the greatest board meeting yesterday. I was skipping down the carpeted hallways of the Conrad, hearing about the work he's already done. Please welcome Akash Chougule.
Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome to Freedom and Progress 2025. I'm Akash Chougule, and about 8 months ago, I became president of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, or FREOPP. I want to start first by thanking Jonathan and the entire board of directors for giving me this opportunity. In particular, I want to thank Ovik Roy. I know, Ovik, you're somewhere in this room. Ovik, if you wouldn't mind standing up, I just wanted to... You'll notice we don't actually have Ovik speaking to open this thing this year. We are actually just giving him a break. He's done more than I can count on one hand of these events and spent enough time on the stage. And so, again, not only am I grateful to Ovik and Jonathan and the entire board for this opportunity, but for the guidance that you have shown me, Ovik, over the years as well, and for creating this fantastic organization. I also very quickly want to recognize my wife, Roma, who's actually not here today because she's at home doing the single most important job in the world, being a mom. Yesterday was actually our wedding anniversary, but I spent the day here at a board meeting and kicking off this event. So next year we will try to avoid November 20th. But that is a question for the future. But as folks in this room know, FREOPP's mission is to uplift Americans on the bottom half of the socioeconomic ladder through free enterprise, individual liberty, technological innovation, and pluralism. We are committed to ensuring that the circumstances of your birth do not determine the circumstances of your life. That is the essence of the American dream. That idea of the American dream is just that, an idea to so many people, but to me, it's very real. It's the reason that I'm standing in front of you here today. I'm very grateful to have my dad in attendance today. And the reason I say that is that my dad has embodied the American dream. Growing up as a child in India, he dreamed about this idea of America, this place where you could do or be anything, so long as you were willing to work for it. He would wake up early to study with dreams of one day coming to America. He was fortunately able to do just that, becoming the first one in his family to leave behind everything he'd ever known and to come here with just $26 in his pocket. Fast forward, my dad bought a 90-day bus pass, traveled the country by overnight bus, even sleeping in bus stations some nights, until he found his first real job in America on the 89th day of that 90-day bus pass. That's how my family's American dream started. So Dad, thank you. But the beautiful thing about America is that while that story is special, it is not unique. This room is full of stories like that. This country is, of course, full of stories just like that. Unfortunately, today, the American dream feels out of reach for too many of our fellow Americans. It felt that way in 2016, too, when Ovik founded FREOPP. That, of course, was a moment of great consequence and uncertainty. Ovik founded FREOPP with the recognition that something about our movement, for all of our incredible successes, was failing to provide hope to far too many Americans. I believe we are at another such moment today. Again, while there have undoubtedly been successes for our values in Washington, and in particular in the states, which you'll hear more about in our panels and at lunch, the past decade has largely been defined by economic populism and far-left progressivism, and it is clear that things are not working. Today, the children of parents without a college degree have a less than 50% chance of exceeding their parents' income. That is down from 90% in 1940. As frustrations mount, so too does the allure of socialism. 43% now hold a favorable view of socialism. Among young adults, 18 to 29, that figure jumps to 62%. 34% have a favorable view of communism. Among young adults, nearly a quarter say they are lonely all or most of the time, and Americans with lower incomes and less education were more likely to say so as well. A third of Americans in poverty suffer from symptoms of depression. People are yearning for a better way, and their frustrations, unfortunately, as we have seen, are spilling over into ugly, tragic consequences. I see these shocking statistics and the stories that follow not only as someone interested in ideas and public policy that improve the country, but also in many instances, like many of you, as a fellow millennial. At 35, I don't have many peers my age who lead public policy think tanks. And I don't mean to put myself on a pedestal, far from it. I'm still frankly shocked that I even am standing in this role to begin with. But what I do see in that is some semblance of uncomfortable truth in the criticism that our movement is in some ways stuck in the past. that we must be better about focusing on the problems of 2025 and 2026 and beyond, rather than the problems of the 1980s, the 1990s, or the turn of the millennium. The crises facing millennials and Gen Z, and the public policies that caused and exacerbated them, for example, an entitlement state that redistributes from younger, lower-income people to older, wealthier people, is something that we must come to terms with, as is the shifting landscape and the strategies and messages that we must navigate to address them. Needless to say, all of these things are very different than they were 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Ultimately, the old way of doing things no longer works. The public policy status quo must change, and our movement's approach to changing them must change as well. We must do more than simply point out the failures of our opponents in think tank white papers and hope that policymakers and the voting public read and understand them. While we are certainly, again, not without our successes, many of which, like I said, we'll discuss today, that approach is how we end up with an actual Marxist elected mayor in the greatest city in the world. We know that government spending and spending and spending and spending on entitlements and handouts does not improve people's lives. We know that broad-based protectionism and tariffs do not improve people's lives. We know that simply punishing the wealthy in businesses a little bit more does not improve people's lives. But today, too many people on both sides have settled for merely calling for more of the same. More government, more control, more class warfare. That stuff will not decrease housing costs or increase healthcare quality. It won't get homeless people off the street. It won't end deaths of despair or end out-of-wedlock childbirth and restore the family. It won't increase jobs or wages or build community or bring the dignity of earned success or provide happiness. It won't strengthen our families or our country. But the good news is we know the principles that work. They have for centuries. They are the reason that America is the shining city on a hill. We must now apply those principles to the moment that we're in today, with strategies reflective of the landscape that we must operate in. That is why FREOPP is not only an economic think tank, because America faces not only economic problems. There are social problems, cultural problems, and many others that impact upward mobility, particularly for those on the bottom half of the socioeconomic ladder. And so, as you'll see today, FREOPP will not shy away from issues merely because they are non-economic or because they are difficult to talk about. If something impacts upward mobility for struggling Americans, we will talk about it and we will tackle it, period, end of story. We'll discuss how we strengthen our culture, create more support for pluralism and immigration that add value to our country, why DEI failed and what's a better way forward, and how we can encourage young people to make objectively good decisions like following the success sequence of, in order, graduating high school, getting a job, and getting married before having children. We'll also do something today that is not done, in my opinion, nearly often enough by those of us who prefer a robust private sector and civil society in place of a bigger government. And that is to move beyond that abstract and actually highlight real examples of private sector, civil society innovators who are solving problems in areas like child welfare, K-12 education, and workforce development. And we'll discuss not only examples, ideas, and policies, but the realistically achievable path to turn good ideas and good policy into durable, sustainable, and yes, bipartisan law. In closing, let me just make one more thing crystal clear. Struggling Americans are not a voting bloc, and we should not treat them as such. Americans who are being drawn to bad ideas because they are struggling, like discarding free markets and pluralism for socialism or racism or anti-Semitism, do not need to be coddled. And the charlatans who push those bad ideas onto them do not need to be embraced as part of our movement. They need to be rejected. For those of us here in Washington, that includes lawmakers, media personalities, heads of esteemed think tanks, and anyone else who contributes to our public policy and our public discourse. The free enterprise and pluralism movement is at a crossroads which demands not a departure from our principles, but a recommitment to them, coupled with an evolution in how we advance them. I hope today can be the beginning of that renaissance. So thank you very much for joining us in this fight. I consider all of you in this room a friend, if not because the vast majority of you, frankly, are friends of mine, but for no reason other than the fact that you're here and you share our values and our priorities of FREOPP. I hope today is as challenging and as thought-provoking for you as it is inspiring and productive. So here is to a fantastic Freedom and Progress 2025. Thank you.